They say twins share one soul split in two. I never believed that, until the day my sister betrayed me. My name is Amelia Rhodes, and I used to think my life was perfectly ordinary. I had a husband, a home near the coast, and a twin sister, Clara, who was my closest friend. We shared everything. Our birthday, our freckles, our secrets, and, eventually, something that shattered us both. It started quietly, the way all tragedies do. Clara moved to our town 6 months ago, saying she needed a fresh start. She'd just ended a long relationship, and I wanted to be there for her. She was always the wild one, bold where I was careful, radiant where I was subtle. When she entered a room, people noticed. When I did, they smiled politely and looked away. That never bothered me. Until Ethan came into the picture. Ethan, my husband, was everything I thought stability looked like: calm, intelligent, a little distant but devoted in his way. We'd been married for 5 years, together for 7. He used to trace circles on my wrist when we sat on the couch. Now, he scrolled through his phone. I told myself that was normal. That love just changed shape over time. Then Clara moved in next door. It was supposed to be temporary. Just a few weeks, she said. Until I find my own place. I remember laughing about it over wine, her head on my shoulder like when we were kids. But weeks turned into months, and slowly, she became part of our evenings. She'd drop by for dinner, sit at the counter barefoot, and talk to Ethan about music, politics, the kind of things he never discussed with me anymore. Sometimes I'd catch 'em exchanging glances that lasted a fraction too long. I told myself I imagined it. I wanted to believe my husband and my sister were incapable of cruelty. But mirrors never lie. One evening, after Ethan said he was working late, I went to Clara's house to return a book. Her lights were on. Through the half-open blinds, I saw him. His jacket on her chair. His hand on her back. Her smile, his smile, reflected in each other. I didn't knock. I didn't scream. I simply left the book on her doorstep and walked away. My hands were trembling so hard I nearly dropped my car keys. That night, when he came home past midnight smelling of her perfume, I understood that part of me had died. For days, I couldn't speak to either of them. Clara tried calling, texting. "It's not what it looks like," she wrote. The oldest lie in the book. Ethan slept on the couch. Silence became our only language. And yet, this is the cruelest part, I missed him. Even after everything, I still craved the comfort of his voice, his warmth beside me. I hated myself for it. A week later, Clara showed up at my door. No makeup, eyes red. She looked like a ghost of me. "Please, Amy, can we talk?" she whispered. I wanted to slam the door. Instead, I let her in. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she said, "I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear, I didn't." Her words felt rehearsed, but her voice trembled. "When did it start?" I asked. She looked down. "After your anniversary dinner. You were so happy that night." He said he felt invisible. Invisible. The word stung more than betrayal itself. She reached for my hand. "I never wanted to hurt you." I pulled away. "Then why did you?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Not rage, not sorrow, just emptiness. The kind that comes after every illusion shatters. When she left, I stared at my reflection in the window. For a second, I thought I saw her face instead of mine. And I realized, I didn't know who I was anymore. The morning I signed the divorce papers, the sky was too beautiful. That kind of cruel, cloudless blue that makes you wonder how the world can keep turning while yours is falling apart. Ethan didn't come to the lawyer's office. His signature had already been delivered in a thin envelope, cold, efficient, the way everything between us had become. I stared at the paper, at the small, perfect loops of his handwriting, and realized that marriage doesn't end with a scream. It ends with ink, Mrs. Rhodes? The lawyer said softly. I looked up. Not anymore, I whispered, and signed my name. The pen felt heavy, like it knew what it was taking from me. The first few weeks after the divorce were a blur. I stopped checking my phone. I deleted every photo of us from my gallery except one, our honeymoon picture in Santorini. He was holding me, laughing, sunlit. I told myself I kept it to remember what love once looked like. In truth, I wasn't ready to let go. Clara had moved away. No goodbye, no message. Just silence. And maybe that was for the best. If I saw her, I wasn't sure whether I'd cry or break something. I tried to rebuild. Bought a new coffee machine. Rearranged the living room. Even dyed my hair a shade darker, as if changing the reflection could change the person. But loneliness has a way of finding you, even in freshly painted rooms. One rainy afternoon, I went to the local bookstore, the one with the crooked shelves and the faint smell of vanilla from the cafe inside. I needed to be anywhere but home. That's when I met him. He was standing by the travel section, flipping through a photography book. Tall, with messy dark hair and a week-old stubble. He had that effortless look, jeans, a navy coat, sleeves rolled up. When he glanced up, our eyes met. Sorry, he said, smiling, I didn't mean to block your view. You are fine, I said quickly, even though I hadn't noticed what he was looking at until then. He tilted the book toward me. Lost Cities of Europe. Ever been? He asked. To Europe? He laughed softly. No, to any of the lost places. Something in his tone, light but curious, made me smile for the first time in weeks. I suppose I've lived in a few, I said, surprising myself. He raised an eyebrow. That sounds like a story. Maybe one day, I replied. We ended up talking for almost an hour. His name was Lucas Bennett, a freelance photographer who had recently moved to town after working abroad. He had that calm confidence that comes from having seen too much beauty and too much sadness at once. When we said goodbye, he hesitated before speaking. Would it be terribly forward if I asked for your number? For book recommendations, of course. I laughed, genuinely laughed. Only if you promise to actually read them. That night, as I scrolled through his first message, I realized something. It wasn't about Lucas. It was about remembering that I could still be seen. He texted me about the book I'd suggested, then about the cafe's terrible coffee, and somehow we slipped into a rhythm. Messages in the morning, small jokes at night. Nothing romantic. Just gentle. One evening, he asked if I'd join him for a photo walk. It's for a magazine feature, he said. You'd be surprised how much easier it is to photograph people when they don't realize they're beautiful. I almost said no, but something in me, the part that still wanted to breathe, said yes. The air was cool that day, the golden hour washing the streets in soft light. Lucas moved with quiet purpose, camera hanging from his neck, hands occasionally brushing mine as we walked. Each touch sent a small, uninvited shiver through me. "Look this way," he said once, raising his camera. I turned, hair falling into my face. He lowered the camera instead. "Never mind. I don't think I could capture that." "What?" "That look in your eyes," he said simply. I felt my heart skip, just once, sharply. "You barely know me." He smiled. "Maybe. But sometimes you don't need years to recognize something real." The words hung in the air between us, fragile and terrifying. I looked away first. "I'm not ready for real." "I didn't say you had to be." That night, when I got home, I stood in front of the mirror again. For the first time in months, I didn't see just loss. I saw possibility. A few days later, I ran into Clara again. It was at a cafe downtown. I didn't notice her at first, until I heard her laugh, that same bright, effortless sound I'd grown up with. She froze when she saw me. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. "Amelia," she began, voice trembling. I nodded once. "Clara." She looked older. Or maybe just worn. "You look good," she said, almost as if she were apologizing. "So do you." An awkward pause stretched between us. Then she whispered, "I wanted to call you. I just didn't know what to say." "Sometimes silence says enough," I replied. Tears welled in her eyes. "He left me, you know. Ethan. 2 months after everything. I guess he realized I was never you." The words hit like a blade. I wanted to hate her, to throw them back, but all I felt was a strange, hollow pity. "I hope you find peace, Clara," I said quietly. She nodded, crying openly now. "Do you hate me?" I hesitated. "I did. For a long time. But hating you just kept me tied to the same pain." For the first time since that night, I saw my sister not as a thief, but as a broken mirror of myself. When she left, Lucas texted me, "You free tonight? The stars look forgiving." And for once, I didn't hesitate. The evening sky unfolded like velvet, and we drove out to the cliffs by the ocean. Lucas brought his camera again, but he barely used it. We sat on the hood of his car, watching the tide. "Do you always chase the stars?" I asked. He smiled. "Only when they remind me what's worth hoping for." I turned to him, heart steady for the first time in months. "Lucas," he looked at me, waiting. "I don't know what this is," I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But it feels like breathing again." "That's all it needs to be," he said softly. The wind carried the scent of salt and rain, and when he brushed a strand of hair from my face, I didn't pull away. No promises. No future written yet. Just two people standing on the edge of something fragile and real. That night, I dreamt of mirrors. But this time, when I looked into one, I didn't see Clara. I saw me, whole, imperfect, alive. The human heart is a strange thing. You can glue it back together, piece by trembling piece, and it will still remember every crack. Even when you've forgiven, even when you've moved on, there's a ghost in every touch. I was learning to live with mine. Lucas and I began seeing each other more often, coffee on Sunday mornings, small walks that somehow stretched into hours. We talked about everything and nothing. His travels, my work, favorite songs, books that broke us. He listened the way Ethan never did, not just with his ears, but with that quiet stillness of someone who actually wanted to understand. One afternoon, we ended up at an old market on the edge of town. The air smelled like cinnamon and old paper. He bought me a second-hand ring, silver, delicate, slightly scratched. For luck, he said. I think I've had enough luck for a lifetime, I teased. Then for new beginnings, he replied, slipping it into my palm. His fingers brushed mine just long enough for my pulse to notice. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was better, a promise unspoken. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning the ring in my hand, watching how it caught the moonlight. I thought of Ethan then, not with longing, but with a kind of quiet sadness. I realized that I didn't miss him anymore. I missed the version of myself who still believed in forever. A few days later, Lucas invited me to join him on a short trip. Just the coast, he said. I'm doing a photo series on forgotten towns. You could use a change of scenery. I hesitated. The last time I'd taken a trip with a man, I'd come back wearing a wedding ring. He saw the hesitation. No pressure, he said softly. It'll go either way. Something about the way he said it, gentle, not demanding, made it easier to say yes. We left early Saturday morning. The roads were quiet, the horizon painted in pink and gold. Lucas hummed along to the radio, fingers drumming on the steering wheel. At some point, he glanced at me and smiled. You always stare out the window when you think too much, he said. You noticed? I notice everything about you. It was said so simply, without pretense, that I had to look away before he saw me blush. We reached a small coastal village by noon, stone houses, wildflowers, the sea stretching endlessly beyond. He took photos while I wandered along the pier, letting the wind tangle my hair. When I turned, he was watching me through the lens. Don't, I said, half smiling. Too late, he murmured, pressing the shutter. You are impossible. Guilty. We laughed, and the sound felt clean, like sunlight after rain. Later, we found a small cafe overlooking the cliffs. The waitress assumed we were a couple and brought one plate with 2 forks. We didn't correct her. Halfway through the meal, Lucas looked at me seriously. You ever think about what you'd do differently if you could start over? All the time, I admitted. But I'm beginning to think the past isn't meant to be erased. Just understood. He nodded slowly. Then maybe you are already starting over. The way he looked at me then, steady, kind, unguarded, made my chest ache in a way that was almost pleasant. We stayed the night at a small inn near the beach. 2 rooms, of course. But when he said good night at my door, something unspoken lingered in the air. His eyes searched mine, not asking, just waiting. I smiled faintly. Good night, Lucas. He hesitated, then brushed his thumb along my cheek, barely a touch. Good night, Amelia. When I closed the door, my heart was racing. It wasn't lust, not exactly. It was fear, the good kind. The kind that comes when you realize you might finally be ready to feel again. The next morning, we watched the sunrise by the water. I stood barefoot in the sand, the sea curling around my toes. Lucas lifted his camera, then lowered it. I could take the picture, he said, but it wouldn't do you justice. You say that to all your models? He smiled. Only the ones who don't know they're beautiful. I rolled my eyes, but the warmth in my chest betrayed me. You are insufferable. And yet you are smiling. I'm tolerating you, I corrected. Same thing, he said, grinning. We stood there for a long time, watching the waves. And somewhere between laughter and silence, I realized I wasn't thinking about Ethan anymore. Not even a little. But life, as always, loves its irony. The day after we returned, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address. No name. Just my handwriting on the envelope, familiar and trembling. Inside was a note from Clara. Amy, I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, least of all your forgiveness. But I need you to know the truth. Ethan and I were already over before that night. He told me he couldn't stop loving you. I was stupid enough to think I could make him forget. I only ended up losing both of you. I'm leaving for good, somewhere far. Please, don't hate me anymore. I never stopped loving you, sister. Clara. I sat on the porch for hours, staring at the words until the ink blurred with my tears. For months I'd imagined her as my enemy. But maybe she'd just been broken in a different way. When Lucas came by that evening, he found me sitting outside, holding the letter. Bad news? He asked gently. Closure, I said. The painful kind. He sat beside me. Want to talk about it? Not yet. Just stay. He didn't speak. He just reached for my hand, fingers brushing lightly against mine. No demand, no expectation. It was the simplest thing. But it meant everything. Later, as the sky darkened, I turned to him. Lucas? Yeah? Why me? He looked surprised. What do you mean? You could be with anyone. Someone easier. Someone not scarred. He smiled softly. Maybe I don't want easy. Maybe I want real. The words hit something deep inside me, something that had been frozen too long. I leaned in, not much, just enough that he could have met me halfway if he wanted to. He did. The kiss was slow, tentative, warm, like coming home after a storm. No promises. No expectations. Just two people choosing to stop being afraid. That night, I lay awake, the sound of the ocean still in my ears. For the first time, I didn't feel like half of something broken. I felt whole. Maybe love doesn't end when hearts shatter. Maybe it simply changes shape, finding its way back when we least expect it. Some ghosts don't haunt you out of malice. They just don't realize you've already moved on. It had been nearly 2 months since Lucas and I kissed for the first time. Everything after that felt like a quiet unfolding. Slow mornings with coffee, long walks by the sea, small touches that said more than words ever could. He never rushed me, never asked for more than I could give. Sometimes we just sat in silence, listening to the ocean breathing. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. That afternoon, I was at the gallery downtown, where Lucas was exhibiting his photographs. The walls were filled with his work, portraits of strangers, cityscapes bathed in amber light, and one image that made my heart stop. It was me, standing barefoot on the pier, hair tangled by the wind, looking somewhere far away. Had captured not just my face, but something deeper, resilience, maybe. Or hope. When I found him across the room, I said softly, "You should warned me." He smiled. Would you have let me show it if I did? Probably not. Then I made the right choice. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help smiling. You are impossible. And yet you are here. Unfortunately, I teased. He leaned closer, voice dropping. You say that like you don't mean it. Before I could reply, someone behind me said my name. Amelia? I turned. And there he was. Ethan. For a moment, the room tilted. He looked almost the same dark hair, same steady posture, but thinner, older somehow. His expression flickered between surprise and something like regret. I didn't think I'd run into you here, he said. I swallowed. I could say the same. He nodded awkwardly, glancing toward Lucas. I saw the photo. It's beautiful. He captured you well. Lucas extended a hand, calm and polite. Lucas Bennett. Ethan Rhodes, my ex-husband replied, shaking it. I didn't realize you two were friends, I said quickly. Then, after a pause, among other things. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. I see. The air between us grew heavy, full of words we'd never said. Later, outside the gallery, Ethan caught up with me. Amelia, wait. Can we talk? I hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. We sat on a bench near the street, the sound of distant laughter from the gallery drifting over. He looked down at his hands. You look happy. I am, I said simply. He nodded slowly. I've wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Not just for Clara. For everything. I was selfish, distracted. I didn't see what I had until it was gone. The old ache stirred, but it no longer consumed me. You are not the only one who made mistakes, Ethan. He shook his head. Still, you didn't deserve what I did. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, quietly, do you ever think about us? I looked at him, really looked. Once, his voice could unravel me. Now, it just sounded like a memory. I used to, I admitted. But I think what I miss isn't us. It's who I was when I believed we were forever. He nodded, eyes glistening. I guess I don't have the right to ask if there's any part of you that still loves me. There is, I said softly. But not the way you mean. He smiled sadly. That's more than I deserve. When I returned to the gallery, Lucas was waiting outside, hands in his pockets. Old flame? He asked gently. Old wound, I said. He didn't press. Do you want to go home? I hesitated, then shook my head. No, I want to stay. With you. He smiled, that quiet, understanding smile that always seemed to reach his eyes. Then stay. We walked along the pier afterward, the evening air cool and soft. The city lights shimmered on the water. Do you regret meeting me? Lucas asked suddenly. I looked at him, surprised. Why would you think that? He shrugged lightly. Because I know what it's like to be someone's second chance. I stopped walking. You are not my second chance, Lucas. You are my first choice. The words came out before I even realized I meant them. But I did. With every part of me. He took a slow breath, stepped closer, and brushed his fingers against mine. Then I'll do my best to deserve that. You already do. We stood there as the wind swept around us, carrying away the last echoes of the past. For the first time since my world fell apart, I wasn't looking back anymore. Weeks passed. Life became soft again. Lucas and I moved easily through days filled with laughter, quiet dinners, long drives to nowhere. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since before the divorce. Sometimes, when I caught him watching me from across the room, I'd tease, you know, it's rude to stare. Head grin. It's not staring. It's studying light. Liar. Completely. Head say, and we'd both laugh. The flirtation was easy, warm, like breathing. One evening, as we sat on the balcony with wine and a half-finished painting between us, Lucas said quietly, you are different when you smile like that. Like what? Like you've forgiven yourself. I set down the brush. Maybe I have. For what? For believing that love ending meant I failed. He leaned closer, voice soft. You didn't fail, Amelia. You survived. I met his eyes then, and something inside me loosened. The grief, the anger, the shame, they were still there, but no longer ruling me. I reached for his hand. Thank you. For what? For seeing me when I forgot who I was. He smiled. You were never hard to find. And just like that, the last piece of me finally fit back into place. That night, as the wind moved through the curtains, I realized something simple yet profound. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. And love, real love, isn't about fixing someone. It's about standing beside them while they find the strength to fix themselves. Some mornings feel like forgiveness. Soft, golden, quiet, like the world is offering you another chance, without asking for an explanation. That's how the morning felt when I woke beside Lucas. He was still asleep, one hand resting near my shoulder, his breathing slow and steady. The sunlight fell through the curtains, touching the line of his jaw, the faint stubble, the curve of his mouth that still made my heart tremble. For a moment, I just watched him. How peaceful he looked, how safe I felt. It wasn't the same kind of love I'd known before. This wasn't about needing someone to complete me. It was about sharing the quiet after all the noise. The storm had passed. Not just outside. The night before, the wind had torn through the coastline, waves crashing against the pier, but inside me, too. All the chaos, all the bitterness that used to drown me had finally gone still. I got up, wrapped in one of Lucas' shirts, and stepped out onto the balcony. The sea stretched endlessly ahead, silver and blue. The air was clean, alive. I closed my eyes and let it fill me. For the first time in years, I wasn't remembering, regretting, or waiting. I was present. Lucas appeared behind me, hair tousled, voice low with sleep. Careful, he murmured. You'll make the ocean jealous, standing there like that. I turned, smiling. That's terrible poetry. I never claimed to be a poet, he said, wrapping his arms loosely around my waist. Just an admirer of good scenery. Flattery won't get you breakfast, I teased. Then you'll starve happily. I laughed, leaning back against him. You are impossible. And yet, he whispered near my ear, you are still here. Unfortunately. He chuckled. You keep saying that like it isn't your favorite word. Later, we drove into town for coffee. The small cafe was almost empty, just the hum of quiet conversation and the smell of freshly baked bread. When I reached for my cup, Lucas brushed my hand with his. A small, ordinary gesture, but it sent warmth through me that no amount of caffeine ever could. Tell me something, I said. Anything. What did you think the first time you saw me? He smiled faintly. Honestly? I thought you looked like someone who'd forgotten how to breathe. I blinked, caught off guard. That's strangely accurate. And now? He tilted his head, studying me. Now you look like someone who finally remembered. I held his gaze, smiling softly. Maybe you helped. He shook his head. You did that yourself. I just reminded you it was possible. That afternoon, we went back to the coast. The pier where it all began. The same place Ethan and Clara once lived next door. The same place where everything fell apart. But it didn't hurt anymore. The memories were still there, but they felt distant, almost gentle, like pages from a book I'd already finished reading. I stood by the railing, watching the water shimmer. Lucas took a few steps back, lifting his camera. Still using me as your muse? I teased. Always, he said, and the sound of the shutter clicked softly between us. "Let me see," I said. He turned the camera toward me. The screen showed an image of me smiling, hair caught in the wind, eyes squinting against the light. "That's not how I look," I said. "That's exactly how you look," he replied. "When you forget to hide." For a moment, I couldn't speak. He had this way of seeing me, of really seeing me, that no one ever had before. As the sun began to set, we walked along the beach barefoot. The waves rolled against the shore, the light turning everything gold. "Do you ever wonder," I asked quietly, "if pain is necessary? If maybe we need to be broken before we can love, right?" Lucas thought for a moment. "I think pain just strips away the lies we tell ourselves. It shows us what actually matters. And what matters to you?" He smiled, looking at me. "Right now, this." The wind carried his words into the space between us, and I felt that old fear stir again, the one that whispered, "What if this doesn't last?" But then I looked at him, at the honesty in his eyes, and realized it didn't need to last forever to be real. It just needed to be true. So I stepped closer. Our hands found each other, fingers intertwining easily, like they'd been waiting for this all along. "You are thinking too much again," he said softly. "I'm thinking how strange it is that I had to lose everything to find this." He smiled. "Then it wasn't really losing, was it?" I laughed quietly. "You always have to be right. Only about you." The last light of day faded, and the stars began to appear, one by one, patient and certain. I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. For a long while, we didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. I'd spent years trying to rebuild what was gone. But maybe the truth was simpler. Some things aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be transformed. Weeks later, I received another letter. This time, it was from Clara. "Amy, I've found a little piece here. There's a garden behind my new place, and I think you'd love it. I'm learning to paint again. Funny how that used to be your thing. Maybe it's my way of keeping you close. I'm sorry for all of it. But mostly, I'm grateful. Because what broke us also set us free. Love always, Clara." I smiled when I finished reading. She was right. Some endings are just beginnings in disguise. That evening, Lucas came home carrying a small box. "What's that?" I asked. He grinned. "A surprise." Inside was a framed photograph, the one he'd taken of me on the pier. Beneath it, in neat handwriting, were the words, "To the woman who remembered how to breathe." I felt tears sting my eyes. "You are unbelievable," I whispered. "Accurate," he corrected with a playful grin. I set the photo on the shelf and turned to him. "You know, one day you'll run out of poetic things to say. Then you'll just have to start showing 'em instead," he said, his tone teasing but warm. "Dangerous promise," I murmured, smiling. "I've made worse," he whispered back, brushing a kiss against my temple. That night, as I stood by the window watching the moon rise, I caught my reflection in the glass. For a second, I almost expected to see Clara again. But she wasn't there. It was just me. Whole. Unafraid. Alive. I smiled. And somewhere deep inside, I heard my own voice, steady, certain, finally whisper, "I'm home."